going on? So we're going to be taking a look today at Kell Brook's keys to victory versus Errol Spence. Both are in their prime. They're going to be fighting at £147 for the IBF World Welterweight title. Kell Brook coming off a loss against Triple G. Errol Spence travelling all the way to the UK to face Kell Brook. It's a tough challenge for both, but let's get straight into it. Let's take a look, see at what Kell Brook needs to do, in my opinion, to win this fight against Errol Spence. The very first thing I think he needs to do is he needs to keep this fight in the centre of the ring. Now, the reason for this is Errol Spence is coming to the UK to fight. He's not going to want this to go to points. His game plan is going to be to get Kell Brook out of there. He stated it, that he wants to end this fight early and go home early. Get a quick win, knock Kell Brook out, and just get out of there. Okay? So, how is he going to do that? Well, obviously he's not going to do that in the centre of the ring. He's going to try to cut the ring off, and he's going to try to knock Kell Brook out. When we saw him against Chris Algieri, we saw that Errol the Truth Spence is very effective when he has his opponent against the ropes. And we can see that he was constantly trying to back up Chris Algieri, and when he had Chris Algieri backed up, he really put it on Chris. Body shots were getting teed off, headshots were getting teed off. It was allowing Errol Spence to plant his feet, and I think that when Errol Spence plants his feet, that's where all this power generates from. Fighters such as Manny Pacquiao don't need to plant their feet as much as Errol Spence when throwing power shots. If Kell Brook allows himself to become flat-footed and go against the ropes, it'll be very dangerous for him. And the reason for this was very apparent when he faced Triple G and even Sean Porter at times in the fight. When Kell Brook went up against the ropes, he struggled with that. He struggled with the power. I definitely think it was most apparent in the Gennady Golovkin fight, but it was also apparent in the Sean Porter fight. Against the ropes, Kell Brook, he will suffer against Errol Spence and suffer badly. So yeah, that's my first key to victory. Stay off the ropes, keep the fight in the centre of the ring. So what's my second key to victory for for Kell Brook? Okay, the second one is actually the jab. Now, with the jab, okay, of Kell Brook, he was able to keep Sean Porter at bay. Now, with keeping Sean Porter at bay, it didn't allow, the jab did not allow Sean Porter to get on in the inside. Okay, Kell Brook has one of the best jabs in boxing, and his jab has knocked some of his opponents out in the past as well. I think a good stiff jab is imperative for Errol Spence, because when Errol Spence faced the likes of Chris Algieri, he was able to just come in undeterred, and because of that, he was able to tee off his body shots, tee off his head shots with full power, with no respect. If Kell Brook triggers out that jab consistently down the pipe, when Errol Spence tries to throw his punches around to the body and around to the head, the quick punch is going to get there first, which is the punch of Kell Brook. The jab is very, very stiff, it's very powerful, and it's the best jab at £147 in my opinion. And his jab will beat Errol Spence's jab as well. Trust me, it will. His jab will negate most of what Errol Spence will do. Every time Errol Spence tries to come in and throw something, if Kell Brook just launches a very stiff jab, it'll get to the target first, and it will cut off a lot of effectiveness that Errol Spence will have in his punch when he's throwing it. So the jab for me is definitely one of the major keys in this fight for Kell Brook to win the fight. The next key to victory for Kell Brook is what? Is to control the pace of the fight. If Kell Brook can control the pace of the fight, okay, he will not gas himself out towards the later rounds and will be able to go 12. If he goes in very anxious, like he did against Triple G, it could well happen that Kell Brook could gas out as he did against Carson Jones, and obviously as he did against, like I said, Triple G. With Errol Spence, he's going to be coming in, starting very fast, okay? If Kell Brook can weather the storm in the early rounds and paces himself, he can come on very strong from rounds 5 onwards. He needs to bag at least 7 rounds in this fight. He's not going to bag the early rounds because Errol Spence is going to start fast and try to get the knockout. If he just triggers out the jab, doesn't move too much, uses defense, ties Spence up early, allows himself to conserve some of that energy for the later rounds, not get into a war earlier on. He will be strong later on down the stretch, and his boxing will show, his timing will start to show, and that's very important. That's another thing which I've not put on the list, is his timing, but his timing will begin to show later on in the fight. Timing doesn't always come instantly. It takes a few rounds for you to adapt to your opponent's speed and when he's coming in and out, and it's very important that Kell Brook goes to points in this fight, because I think in a firefight, Errol Spence will be able to win that fight. But if Kell Brook paces himself, takes towards the later rounds, takes Errol Spence in a place that he's been before, but he's not been too many times in deep water, especially in the professional ranks, he's never been there. Take Errol Spence into the later rounds, really pace yourself, and Kell Brook needs to give himself a chance later on in the fight to really come on strong and use his counter punching and use his excellent boxing and adapt, because Kell Brook is an adaptive fighter. He adapts to the fighter who he's fighting, such as some of the greatest fighters of all time have done, such as Mayweather used to adapt. I think Mayweather is actually the best example of an adaptive fighter, someone who adapts to his surroundings, adapts to the opponent in the ring, takes in what his opponent's giving, and then later on in the fight, makes adjustments, and whatever's working for him, he'll really press on that. Now that's what Kell Brook needs to do in this fight against Errol the Truth Spence Jr. What's the next one? The next one is this little one here, counter punching. Kell Brook needs to counter punch Errol Spence because he's got to get Errol Spence's attention. If he cannot get the respect of Errol Spence, okay, and Errol Spence comes in undeterred, it's like I said before about the jab. He will start to walk Kell Brook down, take Kell Brook towards the ropes, and tee off on Kell Brook. Kell Brook's a big welterweight. If he counter punches Spence on the way in, one, he could knock him out, okay, but more importantly, he can actually stop Kell Brook, Errol Spence's attack, and start to make Errol Spence box with him. If he boxes with him, Kell Brook should be able to, on the outside, hopefully, because Errol Spence is a very good boxer, but I rate Kell Brook a little bit more, and he's got a bit more experience. Kell Brook should be able to dominate on the outside and use his strong straight punches, which in my opinion, his straight punches, his 1-2 is it's the best. It's the best at 147. It definitely is. His straight punches, his jab is the best. He's got a better jab than Spence. Okay, Spence has a very good jab, but I think Kell Brook's jab is better, and his straight right hand is exceptional. Errol Spence's is good. Kell Brook's is exceptional, and I think he needs to use. That's the only, because he's not going to win an inside fight, is he? So this is what he has to do. He has to counter punch Errol Spence and start to get Errol Spence to fight him on the outside and just counter punch him. Because Errol Spence is also going to rush in, so Kell Brook with the check left hook, even with the check right hook, what Errol Spence has got. I mean, up here against Sean Porter, he's showing when he was fighting when he was fighting Sean Porter, he was throwing a counter check right hook. Okay, so he was countering from the southpaw stance with a check right hook. In fact, let me show you this. Okay, here we are. Okay, and this brings us on to the final thing, which I think will win Kell Brook this fight. It won't be the deciding factor, but I think if he does it, it will definitely. It's the one weakness I think Errol Spence has shown. If there is a weakness of Errol Spence, if you want to call it a weakness, he's got to switch southpaw. Kell Brook should not fight southpaw too much, but he needs to switch to southpaw at points in the fight. He needs to confuse Errol Spence, okay? Now, Errol Spence has dealt with this, obviously he's a southpaw himself, but when we saw him against Leonard Bundu, it was one of the toughest fights that he's had of recent. I'm not going to say it was a tough fight because he dominated him every round, knocked him out. But of all the fights he's had, it's the only fight where he did get clipped a bit, And Len Bundu has that switchy style. Kell Brook does that, but way better. He does it through the Ingle Camp. The Ingle Camp are known for fighting in unorthodox angles, and they're known for fighting in the southpaw stance and the orthodox stance. If Kell Brook switches this on him, okay, uses speed, counter punches him from the right hook, counter punches from the left hook, okay, uses his excellent footwork, right? I definitely think Errol Spence will not have seen this before on the level that Kell Brook can do it. I don't think he's seen anything like this. I think the level that Kell Brook can fight at from a southpaw, right? He has an excellent jab, he has an excellent counter right hook. He fights almost as good in the southpaw stance as he does in the orthodox stance. Okay, he's levels above Leonard Bundu, and if Leonard Bundu was able to catch Spence through his switchy style, I think Kell Brook can do it. It's awkward. It's definitely hard when you're fighting someone who switches from southpaw to orthodox. Errol Spence um, is gonna stay a southpaw throughout the fight. Kell Brook needs to switch on him. So that's my keys to victory. Basically, I think they're the things he needs to do. So let's just run through it again. Keep the fight in the center of the ring. Not allow himself to get backed up towards the ropes. Best way to do that: jab him and counter punch him. That's number 2 and number 3. Pace yourself. You know, Kell Brook needs to take this fight into the later rounds. He needs to win this on points. He needs to take the judges' scorecards. And do you know what's happening in Britain as well? So better for him. Take it to the scorecards. And you know, he needs to negate Errol Spence's game plan, which is to knock him out. Don't get into a firefight with this guy like he did Triple G. No need for that. And finally, switch on him. Turn southpaw. Turn orthodox. Use your Ingle footwork. And I think Kell Brook can definitely win this fight. Errol Spence is unproven. Not at the elite level. It's going to be a very difficult fight for Kell Brook. Don't get me wrong. It's going to be a very, very difficult fight. But if he sticks to these keys to victory, I think he can do it. Comment section below. Subscribe as always. Be Real TV. Let me know what you think. Do you think Kell Brook has what it takes to beat Errol Spence? Or do you not? Do you think it's just too much of a big ask for him? In a bit, guys.